Now, it's clear that 2010 is a year of transition in the industry. We have some members, of course, are hunkered down, hoping for the recovery, and maybe their primary strategy is hope. But we have other members who are quietly and seriously making changes to create a competitive advantage. An idea has become the quiet game changer in how suppliers and distributors are successfully doing business together. So we're going to have a panel this morning which includes distributors and one supplier who will openly share what's already happening. So today, let me introduce our first panelist, which is Bob Reynolds from Graybar. The second panelist, Chris Hartmann from IESC. Next, we have Ron Schlader, Crescent Electric. Finally, we have Phil Barrios from Hubbell. And our moderator this morning is Michael Marks, Managing Partner of the Indian River Consulting.
Morning, everybody. You're right, it does feel like we're arrested and the police have the bright lights up here. We're going to be talking about IDEA, and on the outside chance that somebody was either doing serious bonding and drinking last night, or you've been off planet for the last 5 years, I've asked Phil to give us a very short, concise definition of what IDEA is.
Thanks, Mike. IDEA focuses in three primary areas. First off, the genesis was in standards development. They started to develop business-to-business standards for communication through what was known as EDI at the time, real detailed. The second function that IDEA provides is a data warehouse. This is a place where all of the manufacturers can take their product information, put it into an electronic data warehouse, and allows the distributors to be able to extract that information on a regular, on-demand basis. The third function is the actual business-to-business communication network, which is called the IDX. And that allows us to actually send that information from point A to point B, ultimately with the goal for IDEA to act as a data synchronization network so that all of the information, whether it resides in a distributor system or within the manufacturer system, are synchronized.
Very simple three things. So I guess the question I have for all of my panelists is, what has transpired here in the last year that warrants the four of you volunteering to actually be in an executive panel at a leadership summit? I mean, why is this all of a sudden important enough that you're sitting up here, Bob?
You asked?
Yes, I do.
No, seriously, you know, really technology is about productivity. And, you know, the missing void has been the data content, the clean data that we need to keep moving forward. And IDEA has been at this now for 12 years. And we want to make sure that it is moving forward, and it is really starting to move forward. I feel, you know, you said that the train has left the tracks. I think the train has left the tracks. It's not too late to get on board, but I think this is the year of change within IDEA.
Chris, what's your take?
Has the train left the tracks or the station?
Yeah, actually, we're derailed.
I think I'm on the wrong panel. Well, you know, I think probably as a result of some PR, everybody's aware that my company's in the process of consolidating some of our technology. And if it wasn't clear before we started that process, it's infinitely clear now that if we don't have the data and the tools that back up the technology platforms we're putting in place, we're never going to get that productivity that Bob was talking about or the competitive edge that we need to compete in the future. So I tell you, we have tens of millions of dollars set aside to invest in this thing. You know, we have teams of 60 to 120 people already focused on this to make sure that we're successful. And the largest single effort that's taking place with regards to this rollout is data cleansing. And I tell you, that kind of makes...
What do you mean data cleansing?
That's to make sure that the data that's going into these systems that we can conduct and transact our business with our customers and our suppliers is clean, consistent, and accurate. And I tell you, nothing gets your blood boiling when you have all these resources dedicated, and for the most part, they're spending time that, on things that we probably should have done 10 years ago. That's why I'm up here.
That little burr under your saddle on that, I can tell. That sounds like a lot of money. Ron, what's your take on it?
Well, I see it as, you know, we've been working on this thing for 10, 12 years is correct, but I think finally we're at a point, and this is no different than manufacturers, you know, manufacturing product to standards, you know, in the industry. This is data standards, and the data standards are created. It's been a long run. It's taken a while to get there, but the standards are now there. They're set. So now I can start, you know, programming to that standard to really synchronize ourselves with the manufacturers, and we're doing it, and it's happening.
So the development of the standards is done?
The standards are created, especially when you get into, you know, there's that transactional side of the data, and then there's also the sales and marketing side of the data, the attribute data, and all that stuff. But the standards are now created with the UNSPSC number, and this is not a standard created by a third-party company or anything. This is a world standard. So it's not just us in the United States. This is something that the whole world is involved in with the UNSPSCs.
Wow. Phil, what in terms of the changes?
I think the tipping point is really what Ron had just hit as well, and that is that a lot of the manufacturers have been sitting there with a lot of information about their products. The distributors are starting to see the need, a pressing need, to be able to not only get clean data, but also to now move into the internet space. And all of this information that's needed to drive an online catalog, for example, all of that needs to be put in place. Well, we didn't have a standard for that. And that standard got developed and was launched last September as the UNSPSC standard for attributed data. And it simply gives you a framework now to be able to take all of your products from a manufacturer perspective, take all of your products and put it into a spreadsheet in theory, and put all of the pieces of information that would be available online for customers and users to select that product. So I think that standard really built a strong platform for us to move forward.
Well, the standards there, and go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, one of the things I've been saying for years, having spent a little bit of time in the retail world, is whatever the retail world is doing today, we're going to be doing tomorrow. And the retail world figured this out a long time ago. And I think one of the things that IDEA finally grasped, and it was a little surprise to me when I found out, but they've been working very closely with the retail world, and I believe it's because of that work with the retail world that we're going to be able to move this thing quicker. We've come up with a tool, a mining tool, that's going to help us. The manufacturers can put data in whatever form, and we as distributors will be able to pull it out in whatever form we want. So I think when I say it's going to be a year transition, I think we finally have it right. But it's that retail world that has taught us how to do it. You know, the retail world also didn't give options. When Walmart came out and did this, they said, you will participate. That's a little more challenging. We have a lot of manufacturers. We have large ones. We have small ones. And it becomes more of a challenge. I don't know that we can go out and absolutely dictate to people, but, you know, we as Graybar, if we have certain suppliers that we're going to have to bring on board, we're going to have to come up with an understanding that we need them involved. And we're going to try to push them towards IDEA, because I really think that's the umbrella the industry needs to move this forward.
But is everybody going to have to go through the cleanup that Chris is talking about, or is that just part of the special joy of having your job, Chris?
Let's hope it's not my special joy. I'd like to share some of it with all of you. No, absolutely everybody's going to have to go through that process. And again, as the other panelists already indicated, we're poised to do so right now. You know, I don't think we've been in this position until this point. So if we collectively get our act together, we won't be sitting up here lamenting about other channels, and manufacturers don't have to, you know, continue to invest in channels that are not their best partners and things like that. But yeah, there's going to be a little bit of work involved here. But you know, it's our data, and when I say ours, I mean the manufacturers and the distributors, to the extent that we have parts of that we offer our customers. It's our data, so we should take ownership of it, we should get it cleaned up, and we should be part of the solution for our customers. There are parts of our business worldwide that over 50% of that business is done by web commerce. I'm not talking about EDI and electronic commerce, I'm talking about web commerce. So as a baseline, just to conduct our business right now with electronic commerce, this is where we are. There are other parts of the world that are already at 50% or more web commerce. So those are kind of some thought-provoking things that we have to deal with.
One thing all of you have brought up, I was under the impression, and again, consultants know just enough to be dangerous, but I was under the impression this is very much an initiative between manufacturers and distributors in terms of improving productivity, but all of you keep talking about customers. Are we getting pressure from customers to be able to do this too? I mean, how does the customer figure into this?
Absolutely, we're getting pressure from customers. You know, they're all part of the chain, and you know, what we've been trying to do with the manufacturers is to get the data to be able to create catalogs to make life easier for the manufacturer. It's all about productivity gains. We started out, I think, as an industry saying, look at the productivity gains we can get between us and the manufacturers. We're now having the same conversations with the customers. They're asking for those same productivity gains. Technology is what's going to be able to bring us the productivity gains.
If I kind of look at, as an old sales guy, are we going to be using this data to do quotes for customers? Ron?
Well, you know, one of the things that we find out is, you know, we've got an online order entry and search system on the web right now the customers use, and that's growing. You know, as these kids come into the business world, especially the construction or the industrial, they're naturally going to the internet to place orders. One of the complaints that we've constantly gotten from our customers, I can't find anything. I can't find some simple stuff. You know, we've got the drill downs, we've got all that, but a lot of that is because we've tried to make up categorizations and whatnot, and for them to find things, and it's still complicated for the contractor and the industrials. This UNSPSC thing is just it's a major step forward. We're programming now.
Is that the standard?
That's the standard.
What do you call it?
The UNSPSC. Say that 10 times real fast.
It's all right.
But that gives me the perfect drill down capability that's logical in the customer's sense. And so it's not only the customer, it's our own people. You know, the impact, you know, our people, the ability of the guy at the counter to be able to find stuff on our system quick enough to pick it, pack it, and ship it. So, you know, this data that we talk about has impact on every function in our business. It impacts our ability to enter it right on our system. It impacts the ability to pick it right, to pack it right, and customers to order it right and find out, you know, exactly what they want to get. So now with the standard, I can now lay out a website that's going to be much easier for these contractors and our own people to find the right product and quickly.
I can tell you're all twitchy to say.
I just wanted to try to tie a couple of things in together. The UNSPSC code, that's a global standard that is used across the world for product categorization. So this allows us to play off of another standard. So the electrical industry has adopted a global standard for this framework, which is basically taking our ownership and destiny in control, as opposed to deferring to an alternative standard. The second thing is the data quality. Same thing for every transaction that we conduct between manufacturer to distributor to end user is think of you from a manufacturer perspective. Think about shipping your product and your label on your product is blank. There's no information on that label. How do you know what that product is? How do you know what's inside the box? All we're trying to do is take that same information that used to be on the label, move it into a data warehouse, and allow that information to be communicated electronically. And the manufacturers would never ship a product out without a label and a catalog number and a description and all the rest of that, yet we've deferred on the electronic side to to let somebody else manage that product information. So I think it's as critical as the information that they put on the label.
Well, I want to sort of throw out a tough one at you guys. We've now got a standard. I'm not going to repeat all those letters because I'll screw it up. But the market's changed. We've got standards. This thing's sort of at a tipping point. Everybody's talking about 2010 is the year that this thing will sort of go. What has to happen in 2010 to have it work for you?
Well, first of all, you need to do a proof of concept on it, and we're working on that right now. Graybar's doing one with a manufacturer, with IDEA, and with this new mining tool. We think we'll be able to roll this out in about 45 days, but we're not doing it on behalf of Graybar, we're doing it on behalf of the industry. You know, many, many years ago, people like us had a vision of technology and where technology would lead us. And you know, it's taken 12 years to bring that vision to fruition, but I think we're finally getting there. I really believe, as I said before, I think we learned a lot from the retail world, who uses this every single day. All of you do. I mean, you're going to the checkout counter and checking yourselves out today because of technology. I'm not saying that's where this industry is going, but this data that we need will help people do their job more effectively, more efficiently. It will absolutely help us with productivity, which in the end is going to get us to make us more profitable. I think that's going to be the driver. I think we've all seen what systems can do in the back end. Now we're moving it to the customer. Now we're moving it to the front end, and we can be successful in doing that. And as I said, I think that's what's going to drive it.
Since you're doing it on behalf of the industry, I'm going to put you on the spot. Is Graybar going to be willing to share the results of that proof of concept?
Absolutely. You know, it's kind of a pilot that we've been selected. The IDEA board and staff kind of looked at this. We stepped up and said, we'll give it a shot. You know, this is something, could Graybar do this by themselves? Sure. But does it make sense for Graybar to do it by themselves? You know, the rest of the world hasn't moved in that direction. One retailer didn't do it by themselves. One retailer helped lead the initiative, and that was Walmart. Others quickly followed. So yes, when I say we're doing it on behalf of the industry, that means share with the industry.
Super. How about the rest? What are the key things that need to happen? I mean, if we're sitting here in October thinking, you know, things are going really well for IDEA, and things are cranking, what do you need to see to feel good about it?
Well, I just think in a kind of a global sense, what needs to happen is we all sort of have to wake up. You know, we just came off of an economic free fall, and our businesses have fundamentally changed. Not only just day to day, we're talking about productivity now. I mean, 5 years ago, nobody's talking about productivity. They're talking about market share gain and profitable growth and, you know, this and that. Well, our businesses have fundamentally changed. So the winners are going to be those that focus on certain segments and certain markets and certain customers and provide some specific solutions to those customers, but also in our businesses to get those productivity gains. Already, people in the marketplace are starting to talk about business models that are built on speed and convenience and technology. And I think if we don't wake up and see and hear that, if it's not enough that our competitive channels are I was going to say something you're probably not allowed to say, that are beating us. That wasn't enough. Then what's happened to your business in the last 2 years should be enough to tell you that we need to adopt some of these technology tools and turn them into weapons instead of calling them technology tools. They should be technology weapons for us. So it's a wake-up call for us, I think. And it's not too late by any stretch of the imagination to get involved in this thing.
So the key thing that you need to see is, I'm taking this away, you're going to publish the results of a proof of concept so people know it when they see it, instead of the trust me. And Chris, you're saying that there's some folks have been perhaps a bit complacent and it's time to wake up.
Yeah, absolutely. My company is one of them.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot that way, man. Ron, Phil, you guys have anything in terms of what has to happen in 2010?
We're doing some programming changes to handle the standards, and we'll soon be there and be able to draw it in and use it the way we need to. But I guess, you know, what do we need? I need my vendors especially to step up. You know, yeah, there's been a lot of false starts. We're alive and we're well and we're moving forward now. It's time to step up, get me the data, because that data not only impacts me, but it impacts you. You know, we've done some work with a few of our bigger vendors and you know, synchronizing our data various ways, and one of the places to look as far as how clean my data is back at your customer service people, you know, and the manufacturers. You know, even the stuff that comes in electronically, orders that come in electronically, just have your customer service people, you know, tell you how many lines of that data did you have to fix because it wasn't right. I had one guy tell me 26%. So, well, why do electronic data interchange? Why do it? Well, the data's not clean. So we've got the tool.
That's going back to just what Chris said.
Yeah, it's you know, we're doing all this EDI and pushing EDI, and there's some manufacturers that have incentives to get their orders in EDI, but you're still having to fix that stuff once it's there. Well, that's not the answer, is just to do EDI. It's to do the data synchronization with the manufacturer, and then paper just flies. You know, the POs just fly, they, you know, go right on into your business systems, the invoices come back, they get paid on time, they get paid complete. The whole SPA system works, and you spend your time out selling and not fixing product records on POs and whatever.
So everybody cleaning stuff up. That's not the EDI. I guess what I'm connecting is it's not just this sort of EDI thing back and forth.
EDI it's a great tool, but if you don't have clean data, EDI, you're just sending bad information more accurately. That's all you're doing, and you're still.
Wait, do that one more time.
I don't know if I can. You know, EDI is a great tool, but if the data's not clean, all you're sending is bad information more accurately. And on the other end, they have to still fix it. I might as well fax it to them or call it in. And you know, you've got tons of customer service people entering those orders on your systems and getting it so your system can pick it and pack it and ship it to me. But once that data's in sync, you know, it's untouched. It goes all the way through the process.
That's the productivity stuff you were talking about.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Conversely, on the receiving side, if a distributor is not utilizing the data that's supplied by a manufacturer, they may be getting in information that's inaccurate. So what does that do? An order arrives on our doorstep, somebody within Hubbell that we thought was an electronic order should have passed right through.
Right.
It kicks it out. Kicks it out. Can't process this. We've got bad data, bad catalog number, bad description, bad price. Okay?
Okay.
So it kicks it out of the system, and somebody manually now has to go through and find out on this 200 line item order what caused that to error out. All right? So they're searching, and they're going through every line item to try to find out what went wrong. At that point, they find an error, they'll correct that line, and they'll reprocess that order. So that minor catalog number, it might have been transposed, it might have been another issue with a bad feed from other data warehouse, that stopped the train.
All right. I get all that. I think these guys get that. What was new in terms of what you just said that I don't understand is you said the distributor has to use the manufacturer's data. What does that mean?
Okay. The premise behind the industry data warehouse owned by NAED and NEMO was that the data that is in that warehouse is owned, managed, and maintained by the manufacturers. They have that responsibility to continually update with new products or correct the information that's in there.
So if I'm entering 12THHN in my distributor legacy system and I put something in wrong because I did it myself, and then I send the order to my wire guy with my data, that's where you're saying we create a lot of this.
It could be, right.
So theoretically, if in terms of my wire guy, I should be getting the data from the warehouse, and that way when I send it back, it matches. That's the part
Right.
that's broken?
Right, yeah, making sure that you're using as a consumption and feedback to
Got
that
it.
manufacturer the same data. That's what the data synchronization effort's all about.
Got it. That actually makes sense. Thanks, man. As many people in the audience know, I majored in college in beer, so I was very comfortable in the bar downstairs last night, and I did an informal survey, and several people gave me opinions on IDEA. many were held very strongly. And so before we open this up for questions, I'd like to just, what advice would you give? And I'm not going to name names, although one of the guys still owes me $20, so I don't. But supplier A told me, I said, well, where do you guys stand on this? And he said, it's too premature to make a decision. What advice would you have for that individual?
My advice would be get on board. If you look at the people that are involved in IDEA today, the manufacturers, the distributors, the leaders in the industry that are convinced they're going to get this right and make it right, and they're pulling out all stops to make that happen, it's going to move forward. And if you're not on board, you will be left behind. It's, you know, to use Phil's point about shipping the package without the label. This is the other side of that coin. We are getting there. We are going to get there. And I think one of the problems we've had with IDEA is exactly that. Everybody says, I'm going to wait until I see what happens. Well, if you wait, nothing's going to happen. But I think there's enough today that believe it is going to happen, and they're jumping in, and they're jumping in feet first. So I really believe they need to get on board and move forward.
Is part of your wake-up thing, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I would just offer to supplier A and B and C and D and E and F that, you know, we're as part of that wake-up call. I mean, it's our job to lead our companies into the future. And most of the arguments or concerns I hear about IDA and some of the other things, you know, are things that I heard, you know, in the late 90s, I mean, in 2000. I mean, we're kind of stuck back, you know, well, why IDA is doing this, or it's trying to do this, or the agenda of this company is this. Well, that's all, you know, we don't get paid to look back. I'm looking from here on forward. And that wake-up call is that we need to lead our industry and our companies into the future. And IDA, in my opinion, and again, we're investing in our company, part and parcel to some of these things, is that we're ready to move forward. And we're ready to kind of accelerate out of the curve and be a productive and a technology-based company. And so I would just offer that supplier that I think it is the right time, and we're probably all getting paid to lead, as opposed to sit back and look at how things used to be.
That was a nicely delivered shot. Very well done.
I'll give you $40 to tell me who that supplier was.
Sold. I got one that I didn't understand, and I think they may have a wire crossed here, but supplier C told me, and I'm going to use a technical consulting term here. This was in the bar last night. This is just another bullshit way for distributors to get manufacturers to give them money. The look on Ron's face is amazing.
I really don't have a clue where that came from. You know,
Okay.
how it is.
So wherever this guy is, he's on the wrong planet?
Yeah, they step up. You know, the excuses are over with. You know, that, you know, we're living in the past, and yeah, there's been a lot of false starts, like I said before. The standards are there, it's moving, and it's going to get to a point, and I'm not sure when it's going to be, but if you're not involved, if I'm not getting your data through the IDW, I really think you're going to be too costly for me to handle your line. That's how serious we're going to be. You know, we're driving the efficiency, you know, whether it be processing POs, processing invoices. I'm not going to add staff to do all that paperwork. And that stuff's growing. The SPA, the agreements getting into my system, the SPA claims and the rebates and the whole bit. You know, we're sending documents, you know, tons of them. But if that data's not clean, it just interrupts. We have to stop. We have to get people involved to fix it. And it's going to get very soon to a point where I can't justify handling your line if we have to manually intervene all the time. And that's really, I believe that.
Mike, can I make a comment?
Sure.
This isn't about distributor needs or distributor wants. IDEA is a partnership between NEMA and the distributors, and it's about improving. It's about improving performance, improving processes for both organizations. So I think we're looking at it wrong when it's all about getting more money into the hands of distributors. It's a partnership, and it's a partnership that is eventually going to lead to a three-way partnership with a customer. And the customers drive everything, and they are to the point today where they are driving this.
I had some opinions from distributors, and in general, they were all very, sort of common. And by the way, I got some. Well, all I need to do is get my suppliers to step up. I'll be a happy camper. But the other ones we're just coming out of a recession. I'm not going to spend a nickel on anything that isn't absolutely mission critical, and we will support IDEA if it actually takes off, but there's no advantage to me to be early. Two different people gave me those comments. What advice would you have to that? Phil, you look like you need to say something.
Well, there's a couple of things that come to mind. Certainly, do you want to be a leader? I think we go back to that comment. Do you want to act in a leadership role and try to take your company into this age where this information is really what ends up driving both top line and bottom line impact? It's top line because if you've got the right information and you can present that out online, it attracts customers to you and allows you to generate sales. On the bottom line, back to the error rate, if I have to attend to 20% plus error rates with a manufacturer, that cost of doing business with them is escalated. And it really makes you review that line or that product line and say, boy, is there another alternative out there? Is there another product line that I might be able to use that has an error rate of less than 1%? That might be worth investigation. So I think that has to be looked at both ways.
One thing, I was just sort of connecting some dots here, thinking about the SPA process. If somebody's got their data synchronized and somebody else doesn't, they're going to have to sweeten that SPA. Maybe that's, sorry, I'm just making that up.
I just want to make, I don't know where that distributor, I don't know at what point in your bar time the comment came, but I don't know where that distributor's competing. I mean, how can you not, in this, where we are right now, how can you not look out there and say, now's the time to get ahead of that curve? This is the same distributor that's going to be drinking himself into a puddle 5 years from now going, wow, I'm getting my rear end kicked by everybody else in my market. So I don't know, I don't understand where that distributor might be competing. I really don't.
Well, maybe they're in the running for a Darwin Award. Take them out of the food shade before they reproduce.
Yeah, one other comment. Yesterday we heard Alan Bellio talk about
let the record show I didn't say that. I was nasty enough. Boy, thank you.
Sorry, man.
But yesterday we heard Alan Bellio talk about the economic cycle and where we are in an economic cycle. And he said there's a time to invest and there's a time to pull back. And we are in the cycle now when it's time to invest, not pull back. This is when you're going to get the best gains. So I really encourage everybody to get on board right now, before it's too late.
Good. Well, I wanted to get those through. I'm going to give our audience here a chance to ask a couple questions. So can we bring the lights up so we can see our audience? And what we'll do is, I know, it's better this way. We can see them now. We'll have a moment of silence while everybody waits for somebody else to raise their hand. But we got mic runners. Look, raise your hand, and the mic runner will bring you a mic so we can hear you. I'd appreciate a question instead of an emotional speech, but if you really need to make an emotional speech, take your best shot. By the way, when you guys do this, everybody always waits for somebody else first. So there we go.
Okay, we'll start one here. How does IDEA fit in with trade service and or vice versa? And can both survive in an organization? And what customer-focused tools would IDEA have like trade service has?
Yeah, how does that all play out?
Well, I'll try to give you at least a little perspective on it. Trade service certainly has been around for a long time. They've been the service provider for data for many years to the distribution community and the contractor end user market. When IDW was created, as I mentioned earlier, the premise behind that was for the manufacturers to take ownership of the quality of the data that was in IDW. That's the primary differentiator between trade service, who does their data development completely independent of the manufacturers. I don't want to speak on their behalf. That's up to them. But in terms of what content of information is in IDW, the manufacturers are the ones who are ultimately responsible for that. And I would pose a question. If the data that somebody's consuming is inaccurate, does there become some type of a liability with that information if it is not correct, if the manufacturer has not approved that data? That would be a question, I guess, going forward, especially in a...
That's the crossover question about substitution.
Right, right. So you get some issues in terms of what is compatible, product A to product B, and that filters down to the contractor side where some of their products are moving into that realm as well.
Go ahead, Ron.
I really believe that there's a opportunity for this industry to really leap forward with a more of a cooperative effort with a third party, whether it be trade service or whoever. I see trade as a very viable customer interlink with the estimating bid packages and whatnot, and helping broaden the scope of the products that I've got access to. I only want one supplier of this data with one standard of bringing it in and updating my system. But I think there's, we've got this battle going on out there. I believe there's a true opportunity to really work out in some sort of a cooperative effort to kind of fill in the gaps and really take it to the next step. And I really don't foresee IDEA getting involved in the estimated bid packages, and there's a lot going on with that stuff out there. The cross-referencing, I know you guys don't like it, but we need it. I got to have it. And a third party is a good one to give us some sort of a cross-reference opportunity, because I need that to service my customers. And I know you guys all have your own cross-references. You don't want to share.
It's all relative.
That's
right?
got tremendous value for me and my systems. And I really think that we got to look outside the box and start looking at some sort of cooperative effort as we move forward to really make this thing go.
Part of what you're saying, I think, in terms of the gentleman's question about where it's going to actually sort itself out in a couple of years, that there'll be IDEA, trade services, probably other things that don't exist right now, but that what I would take away from what you said and Phil said, that somehow or other all the data ends up being synchronized. It doesn't matter who's providing services in the market as long as the data is that the core part?
Yeah, I think it's the completeness of the data. It's the completeness of all the lines that I support, and there's a lot of lines out there that aren't in trade and there's not in IDW, and I still need that data. Distributors are changing. We're selling different things than we sold 5 years ago, and 5 years from now we're going to be selling different things and different lines and different manufacturers, and somehow this industry's got to keep up with that stuff too. I want to drive efficiency of placing orders and SPAs with them, just like I do with the Hubbells who have been around for years. So this, I don't know, I heard one time that 50% of the products we're selling today weren't even around 5 years ago. I can't remember the number. This was back 20 years ago that they said that, and it's still true, and it's growing. So how does this industry stay on top of all that stuff? And I think can any of us do it alone? I doubt it. It's going to be tough. But I think a cooperative effort, between is really what we need.
Mike, I think down the road they're going to complement one another. But I think IDEA has it right in that, the consistent message is we want the manufacturers to own and be responsible for the data. And that's going to be for safety, it's going to be for legal reasons, and everything else you can think of. Accuracy.
Okay. Another question?
Over here.
Where? Got it? Yes, sir.
Hi, Sean Leahy from Vantage Group. I hate to do this, but I feel like we're in a time warp and we're beating around the bush here. The real keys to the success of this is in the attributed data and the drill down. And every year for the last 3, 4, 5 years, we're waiting for the time when we could make the switch and go from trade service to IDW. But every year we say we can't do it, it's not ready. And the time needs to come, and it needs to come pretty soon when we could really do that. But quite frankly, the attributed data just never gets there where we can really create a catalog based on the attributed data within the IDW. And we need to get to that point. We need to get to that point soon, or the time frame is going to go away. And quite frankly, I don't think that the UNSPSC is structured to allow the drill down that you're talking about. But those two things need to happen in order to make this successful, and someday soon that needs to happen, or the time is gone.
The second part of that, Sean, about the standard and the rest of it, that to me is detailed enough with a senior executive audience. I'll let everybody sort out the factual sort of basis of what that needs later. But I think the first part of what you're talking about, which is how do we get to that tipping point that we can switch over? I think that's a real interesting question, because
Yeah, let me comment.
somewhere Hannibal burned the bridges. You know, I mean, how does this work?
Manufacturer perspective, okay, a little personal review of what has happened with Hubbell. We have 50,000 products that are fully attributed, okay? They have been fully attributed for about 6 years. We've not put them into IDW for 2 reasons. Number one, we didn't have a standard that allow us to take that information, put it into a format that I could easily communicate that data into IDW. So we've been holding back, right? It's only been availed to those people on the consumption side who actually could take that information into their operating or business system. Number two, now that we have that standard, and you talked about this attributed schema, it's not just this UNSPSC code, as you said. This is kind of going deep in the weeds. The UNSPSC codes is a framework for the attributes. There are over 1,500 product categories that have up to 27 attributes per category. That's the matrix that allows us...
That defines anal retentive.
Yeah. That's the matrix that now allows us to put that information in there, okay? So we can put it in there. I think a lot of the manufacturers were holding back, saying, until we get that standard established, why am I going to send it in one way and manufacturer B sends it in another way, and then the distributor tries to pull it out and make sense of it? It won't. There has to be some consistency in terms of that format.
If I'm running a 5-location distributor, I've managed to survive the recession. I got one of the good standard ERP packages that everybody uses here, and I've been using trade services since dirt. How do I do the switchover? Well, how do we get to the point to deal with what Sean's talking about?
Well, I don't think it's about surviving, anymore. I think a lot of our company. Well, by the way, if your company is into survival and just eke and buy, knock yourself out for another couple of years. I think it's about. Profitable growth, and I think it's what we've been talking about. And I don't disagree at all with what Sean said. I think now's the time. I think that collectively there's a convergence of the leadership aspects we talked about, the technology standards that we talked about, the way we fundament the business models that are changing, and the customer demands on us that are changing. That means that we're going to have to do it. I think for the first time in a long time, you're going to see 4 or 5 or 6 distributors, larger, maybe mid-sized distributors that are going to actually have to sit down with manufacturers and say, boy, it's a little bit past, I need your help with this. It's that the time is right, I need your help, and by the way, it has to be this way for me to run my business. And I think that we're in a good spot for all of us to come together and do that. But I think if for those folks that are sitting back and waiting a little while longer, they may be waiting a little too long, because there are a lot of people out there that are doing these things, as I mentioned, in other areas of the world and even in our market. So I think the time is right, and again, it's not about just eke and buy anymore.
Okay. Another question? Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm Scott Schwartz from Hubbell Electric Supply. How do you combat the fear for manufacturers that this process will commoditize the entire industry?
I'm a little sensitive to this one. We've talked from the beginning about making sure that it's not just the product description that drives the selection process for a specific product. It would be very easy if I don't include as one of the attributes the brand name of that product to commoditize a lot of multiple manufacturers. The brand,
What does that mean?
if you go on to a website and you have to select what brand car you want to look for, that ends up being one of the first selection criteria. It's not that you're looking for a four-door sedan, and I'll take any four-door sedan. I'm actually looking for a Chevy, or I'm looking for a brand, and then within that category, I'll start looking at that manufacturer's detailed product. So the important part is to ensure that the detail level provides an opportunity for that manufacturer to differentiate. Within the standard that was developed and launched last year, we provided two fields of information. One was brand name, so that is part of the differentiation. And we always have a manufacturer-specific table, if you would, or a listing of information that allows that manufacturer the ability to differentiate their product from anybody else's. And it's pretty much a text field. So that if I said my product had, you know, 0.02 gold-plated contacts, and that was the most important thing that differentiated mine from my competitors, that information can be put into that data warehouse.
One of the things that when we did the study in the future of residential construction last year, you know, when this thing was coming out, is that when we were doing all the contractor interviews and the focus groups, people are emotional. To me, it was nuts. People are emotional about wire nuts and brands. You know, I would have figured that would have been a it's not in the mind of a contractor. I mean, they got rat-like about it. It was so what you're saying is that by having this thing set up, it actually, in a way, can prevent it.
Exactly. That's the key. And the manufacturers that are sitting in this room, if you look at how that structure is set up for the standard, you can leverage those two fields to make sure that when searches are done on generic products or generic categories, that your product differentiation actually rises up to the top of the list.
I'd like to put you on the spot for just a second. It's a small spot, not a dated dweeb down at the bottom. But if one of the senior execs of another manufacturer wants to call you and say, "What are the two fields so I can go talk to my data dweeb?" Would you be willing to at least point him in the right direction?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And anybody who's not familiar with the IDEA staff, who's sitting in the middle of the room there, they're more than willing to help them as well.
Okay, super. Got time for maybe one more question, maybe two. Yes, sir?
One of the things, hopefully this thing's on. One of the things I'd like to see us do is move away from EDI. I think EDI has been a great tool to standardize our transmission documents, but we need to be doing it directly with the manufacturer as opposed to going to a third party. We also need web services. We ought to be able to send you a catalog number and get an immediate response from you telling us what's in stock and what the cost is. So we need direct communications. There's no reason we can't get it because we get it now from UPS and from FedEx. So when are the manufacturers going to support taking documents directly?
That's a really cool question. And by the way,
that's a technologist.
What's that?
That's a technologist.
Well, he's a Facebook guy, but don't hold it against him.
I'll comment. Just because I also chair the IDA Standards Committee, which deals with the business-to-business transaction side. So the group that's out there doing the standards for EDI, we have for the last 3 years, been pushing them to be careful not to be solely speaking EDI. That we don't want them to simply build a standard for that type of transaction. There are other languages. You've mentioned a couple, XML, and again, way too deep. But the bottom line is we would want to start it off by having the IDEA group on the standard side establish what those standards need to be. Are we going to build a standard for XML? Are we going to build a standard? You mentioned web services. They don't exist today, but that is a logical progression because EDI, as much as we thought it was going to go away probably 10 years ago, continues to do very well. But there are alternative languages that we're going to need some standards for to move us forward.
Ron, you look like you want to weigh in on this.
I agree. Our program, I'm not a techie, so I don't understand it once you get to that level, but the XML thing, and we've had a couple of vendors ask about, can you start XML? Well, it's like trying to get your arms around a monster out there, because there's no format. It'd be different for every manufacturer. There's no standard to the layout to import it in and actually use the data. So until we get to that point, can we even look at that as a viable
Well, but
offer?
if you have the standard and you get the synchronization, which goes to what Chris
There-
is talking
then we
about,
can start
if
using
they're
it
going to
as a
do it
tool.
on the internet or through it's different, I mean, who cares
Exactly.
at that point, right?
But
It's like
right now-
UL, I plug it into the
Right
wall.
now, it can look like anything, and it's just scattered data that I'd have to program every manufacturer to say this goes in that field. And
That
that's
dog ain't going to hunt.
No.
Gentlemen, we're basically out of time here in just a couple of minutes, and what I'd like our audience to sort of take away from this is a line from a movie called City Slickers with Jack Palance and Billy Crystal and Little Norman the cow, and everybody kept chasing around Jack Palance going, what's the one thing? You need the one thing. If there's one message that you think this executive audience needs to hear about this, and take away in like 25 words or less, I mean, but the clear, most number one thing they need to take away in terms of 2010 and IDEA, and I'll start with Phil and we'll end with Bob. What is that message you want these guys to get?
I'll give one message for manufacturers. Take ownership of your data. That's very important, and it will serve you well long term. For distributors, please ask from your top level CEO, president of the company, to the manufacturer's CEO, ask them to support this effort.
Ron, what's your number one?
No, I think it's past is past. The standards are created. It's time to move forward, and it's working. We're getting the data. It's working just great. We need to push the manufacturers to step up because the excuses are gone. It's done.
Chris?
I think our business models are fundamentally changed, and if you're in the past and you're sort of preoccupied with the margin line, I think you need to start looking at productivity and below the margin line, because that's how we're going to make money. And I think IDA and some of these other tools are weapons, not just productivity tools.
Bob, you get the last word.
One of the pillars of our strategic plan is innovate through technology. I think we were an early adopter back in the late 70s, early 80s. We've continued to do that. We probably put in one of the largest SAP systems in the country when we did that. We've seen the value from it, so we are 100% behind the success of IDEA and in helping the industry move this thing forward. It's all about productivity. Productivity is going to move you into more profitable businesses.
You heard it here. Please join me in thanking our panelists. We're done, guys.